All right, welcome back, friends. This is Friends We Made podcast, talking about House of the Dragon season 1, episode 8. So almost done with the season. Almost done with the first season. We're at the climactic part, coming in for the home stretch. I'm Court. This is Tim. Maybe you know, maybe you don't, but welcome. Uh, it's an interesting episode because it starts off. I feel like just giving us that little dialogue exposition to let us know we have moved forward in time once again.
Yeah, I didn't
And
expect that. I don't know why. I mean, I guess I kind of expected it eventually, but I thought we might stick to that age for a little while.
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually went back and revisited the source material from this specific point in time because I got over it before the show started, but like it's just hard reading something that's a history book and remembering all the names and being able to like remember exactly who did what. And so I have more context with it watching it, and I can't quite figure out exactly how forward we in time we have gone. I think it's about 9 years because they're condensing events that happened not at the same time and like streamlining the story. I
Yeah,
know she said it'd been 6 years since she saw her husband last, but I don't think we're meant to believe that it's only been 6 years since Damon and Rhaenyra got married. I think it possibly has been closer to 9 years, but I think they're intentionally making it hard to figure out.
yeah, and it's hard with the kids' ages. They all look so different. Some of them
Right.
seem to have aged more and grown so much, and the other ones don't seem to have grown as much. Like it's just really, I
Well,
mean,
I mean, the difference between the way Viserys and Damon looked in episode 1 versus the way Viserys and Damon look in episode 8 is ridiculous because Damon looks the exact same. Like they
yeah,
could have filmed all these scenes the same day. And
he's had some
Viserys,
haircuts.
yeah, like he's like completely falling apart. He looks like fucking Two Face in The Dark Knight Rises now. Like is part of your face falling off? Like what the hell is wrong with this man?
I mean, he was missing an eye. They showed him.
Yeah,
It was
that was
gruesome.
crazy. That
Yeah,
was crazy. So yeah, it starts off. We're back with the Valerians, kind of where we left off, kind of. And at this point in the story, Cornelius Valerian has fallen gravely ill. I think they said it was from fighting the Stepstones in the show. And it's funny because he doesn't actually die. It's like this whole thing was all about like who's going to take over his seat when he dies. He doesn't. He recovers from all this. It was all pointless. Vayman was being a dumbass. He could have just waited everything out. And in the books or in the source material, Vayman I think is his nephew, not his brother. So not quite as a clear cut line of succession there. But we see that he wants to inherit the seat of his family house. He knows that Lucerys, who's I believe currently in line to inherit it, Luke is not really of Valyrian blood. And I feel like everything he was saying was right, but I feel like he was saying it for the wrong reasons. I think he's just ambitious and he wants to be that lord. Like he wants that, and he feels like he has an avenue, so he's going for it.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, he's definitely ambitious.
Because he does
Definitely
have
not.
two nieces that are clearly have a better claim to it than he does, and he just oversteps them. It's like, oh no, they're women. This is
Yeah,
this is for me. So yeah, we see time is a lot of time is going by, and also I feel like there's children that we have not seen that should be there. I know for one, Alicent and Viserys does have a younger son. I think it's Darion Targaryen, and I think he's like the one that everyone likes. Like he's not a little shit like Aegon, and he's not a psychopath like Aemon. You know, he's just like the one that they all like. But he's off in Old Town, I think, squiring for um, Lord Hightower, Otto Hightower's older brother.
yeah.
And
Nobody's mentioned
also,
him. Is he supposed to be there? You think?
what's that?
Is he there in the show? They're just not mentioning him. You think? Like, will he be?
Yeah, I think someone asked maybe George R. R. Martin about it, and it was like, yeah, we just didn't see him be born because the time jump, but he wouldn't be off at this point squiring in Old Town. So I think he's in it, and also Aegon and his sister wife Helena also have two or maybe three children that we don't see yet, and I think they are going to be in here because like all these kids are going to have like a role to play in what's coming. It's just interesting. I feel like they're going so fast and they're not even able to show us the things that are kind of necessary.
Yeah,
Um, And George R. R. Martin got asked about that, and he said that honestly, you probably need about 13 episodes to do everything that they want that is in the source material to set everything up. But they thought that if they did that, the complaint would be that things are moving too slow, like nothing's actually happening. In every episode, I guess something's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're doing a good job of like putting a lot in each episode, but I mean, each episode is somewhere between 4 and 8 years, so they gotta squeeze a lot in there.
Right. So yeah, then we see Rhaenyra. She's going back to King's Landing. I guess it's the first time she's been back in quite a while. I don't think they give us any idea of how long it's been since they've been back there, but a lot of things have changed. We see the big 7-star of the Faith of the Seven, which is not the religion of the Targaryens, but that's just kind of showing that the growing influence that the Hightowers have had since they've been gone. And am I still there? You see me? Hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Looks like I was blinking out for a second. Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. And the showrunner said that if you go back to the first episode, when you first see the castle, there's more bright colors, there's more people around doing things. And now it's darker, it's more somber. And that's kind of effect of Alicent's influence and like her religiosity. It's more of I guess everyone's more pious, which means everything's more boring.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can see that. She's also just not a very super fun-loving gal anyway, so.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure if it's one of those things where she's hiding behind the religion, like this veneer of self-righteousness, and she, she's doing it for that. But then when I think back to the first few episodes when they were young, we did see her in the set praying a lot. Like it does seem like they set it up that she does have that in her to an extent.
Yeah, I mean, she got Rhaenyra to pray at one point. She like brought her in the church.
Yeah,
forgot about that.
Yeah, and so there was a scene where she's talking to the young girl that her son has assaulted, and that was kind of uncomfortable to watch because that girl was so scared. I just felt there was so much sinister energy in that scene. And the last time we saw Alicent was when she was asking for a kid to have his eye ripped out. So it was like, what is she doing? Is she manipulating this? Like, I was thinking like, Cersei. What would Cersei do in this situation? But I don't think Cersei would ever be in that situation because she wouldn't give a shit about that girl or what Joffrey did. She wouldn't even go talk to her.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, she just has to be more subtle. They don't have the power that Cersei had.
That's true.
That they were allowed to run rampant pretty much. And I mean, there was no consequence to pretty much anything she did. But, Alicent's definitely subtle about it. And I feel like it speaks to like the coming of this game of houses. It's like hasn't really started yet at full strength. But once it does, just more power goes to the houses. You would think the Targaryens had more power, but I guess at some points they did.
Yeah, and I feel like I don't know. She could do whatever she wants to that serving girl, and obviously nothing's going to happen to her. And I didn't know what they were trying to show us with the scene because it seemed like she actually did care. Like she was actually like upset that happened to her. But I think more so what it was is she's a person who cares about appearances. She was upset that Aegon did that because she doesn't want people thinking that Aegon's out here cheating on his wife, who's also his sister, and that's really, I think, the crux of her annoyance with her son. It wasn't like, oh, how could you do that to that young girl? It's how could you potentially bring shame upon your name and the family? Because I think she has to see that she wants him to be king one day, and so she wants him to have as good of a name as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it also, to me, like what I got from that scene was definitely like, I want to say Cersei because they're so different. I mean, they're doing a good job of making them different, but like she's definitely like villain level where it's like, just after, like you said, the last scene we saw, she was trying to get this kid's eye cut out, and now she's like so manipulative to this girl, and like you're not even sure if she does care. That's how manipulative she is. And either way, she just gets her to not say anything, gives her this potion to like kill the baby, and moves things on. I mean, that's a businesswoman. You know what I mean? Like she is getting the job done, and she's not remorseful about it. She literally just moves on.
Right.
She's not her first rodeo, and I don't know. Like I said, you just got to get between that and her talking to that one guy on the I can't remember the guy's name on the boat. Creepy dude.
Oh, Larys.
Yeah.
12 foot.
Yeah, about how I may need you in the future. Just shows that she's just, I don't know, she's very capable of doing things, I feel like, and kind of
Oh
got
yeah.
that from.
Yeah, and so then we see, I'm not sure if it's before that scene or the scene after, we see Viserys for the first time, and it's just like, oh my god, like he looks so bad. Like his teeth are rotting out of his head, like parts of his face are falling off. He's lost an eye, like he's just on milk of the poppy and in bed. And it's just like, yeah,
I
Allison's
was
in
like,
charge. This guy's not doing nothing.
I was definitely like, get that man some milk of the poppy.
I feel like he might have had too much milk of the poppy.
I mean, that's kind of the point of that, like between when he casts it aside and goes to the throne, and
right,
his brothers or his brothers concerned about it. I mean, that's just the easy way out. They're just keeping him alive.
Yeah, and I think that was the point. Like, you don't want him to die if you're Alicent and Hightower. You want him to stay alive as long as possible, because as long as he's alive, things are going smooth. Once he dies, that's when the things, the status quo gets rocked. But I did like the fact that, like, Rhaenyra went there and was like, hey, this is hard. You put me in this position. You made me your heir. If you're going to do this, you got to come defend me. Because Alicent was not going to give her son, I forget the name of the castle now, because we were just talking about it last week. They were there the whole, Driftmark.
Driftmark.
Yeah, she there's no way. The whole thing was a farce. It was not going to happen. Maybe she had Queen Rhaenys on her side after she betrothed her daughters to him, but I wasn't sure that might go sideways too, because Rhaenys obviously hates her now because she thinks they killed Laenor.
Yeah.
And then you go out into the yard. You see the boys doing their sparring. You see Aemon's definitely grown. He's huge now.
Yeah.
He's a good fighter. I did appreciate when Christian Cole's like, you'll be winning tournaments in no time. Like, I don't give a fuck about tournaments.
Yeah.
like this guy's a prince. He's not out here trying to win glory in tournaments like a knight. Like, he's just out here trying to learn how to fight because he's a psychopath.
Yeah, it's crazy with one eye to be that talented. I feel like that would definitely make things harder.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But, I mean, I think that's pretty consistent with the source material. I know they called him Aemon One Eye, and they described him as saying he was always fierce. And I think he puts like a green ruby stone in place of the eye at some point, which kind of reminds me of the Tywin Lannister actor in Last Action Hero.
Yeah.
Benedict Arnold with the glass eye.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like Aemon's strongly in that hole when they say every time a Targaryen is born, the gods flip a coin. It's like, okay, that's definitely the crazy one. The one with one eye and the eye patch. Yeah. He's the one I don't want to be king. He's a psychopath, I think.
Super huge dragon.
Right. The biggest, most fiercest dragon that they let him have when he was a child for some reason.
Yeah, I'm sure that helped.
So yeah, so that was interesting just to see like how much he's grown. And I mean, Luke and Jace have grown too. Obviously, the actors have changed again. I think now we got all the children with their adult actors. But they're just nowhere near as big as he is.
No. Which, I mean, their dad was big.
Right.
I mean, he was a big guy, so I feel like they're going to grow.
His nickname was Breakbones.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. That's a good nickname.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a big guy, so I mean, I feel like they'll be there. They're just a few years younger, and that's a crucial age still.
Right, to be smaller, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So then, we actually see this hearing that they're having here, where each side gets to say why they should be the Lord of the Driftmark. And it was clearly a farce. Rhaenyra knew it. I know that's a frustrating position to be in, because there have been times where I've gone to hearings in court and I knew the judge was going to rule against me, and I had to make the argument thinking my whole time, this is bullshit. This guy's mind's already made up. Doesn't matter what I say, he's not going to rule in my favor, but you got to do it. So I was understanding that, and I did feel like what Vaemond was saying was right, but I think I like when she called him out on it. It's like, no, this is about your ambition. Don't make it about anything else. Yeah. And then we see Viserys get bought in there on his being carried in a chair, and then the most longest excruciating walk I've ever seen. I love when they announced him. King Viserys, first of his name, King of the Andars and the First Man. I forget all his titles, but it just ends with a Protector of the Realm. And it's like, yeah, this is our protector, guys. This is the realm's protector, the guy who can't walk the length of the throne room and climb that throne.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen like many things on the internet about that walk and just his acting in general and like how well he's been doing. And I don't know, I like that scene. I didn't at the time realize how powerful it was to others, but I mean, it was a good one.
Yeah, I definitely like the scene. He definitely sold it. I like when his crown falls off his head and Daemon's there to help him up to the Iron Throne.
Yeah, see, I heard that was not even like scripted.
Which I don't understand how that happened. If it wasn't scripted, how was the camera right there at the right time?
Yeah.
I feel like maybe it wasn't scripted, but he's like, yeah, I got this idea. Like, all right, let's shoot that. Otherwise, how did we get that? But yeah, that was a really cool.
Or it happens, and they're like, "Oh, keep it. We're going to try that again, but keep that in there again."
True, something like that. But yeah, it's cool. It was cool to see him come through for his daughter. Apparently, in the source material, when I went back and reread it, this was the point where he had all those guys' tongues ripped out because they were talking about how those were not really his grandsons. It was Corlys's other nephews, basically, who were there to tell the story because they all feel like they had a claim to that seat. And yeah, he wasn't going to take his grandson. I mean, either way, it's his grandson. It's Rhaenyra's child. We know that. Whether or not it's Laenor or Lord Strong, why would Viserys care? Like, he's not just going to give you his grandson's seat.
Yeah.
And so, in the source material, I don't think Vaemon was there. He was like spreading that, and Rhaenyra sent Daemon to chop his head off. So Daemon does chop his head off in the source material, and he then feeds his body to Rhaenyra's dragon. So I guess he got a better. Wasn't quite as bad in the show as it was in the books.
That was pretty bad. His like tongue was all hanging out and shit.
Yeah, that's a cool scene. I was like, there's no way he's took a guy's head off like that with one swipe, though.
I think you can.
Really, with that sword?
I don't know about that sword. I didn't get to. I mean, I guess I've seen a little bit, but I didn't really look at it in that fashion. But I mean, I do know that like, swords do that. That's like, they go through some shit. I mean, heavy sword swung by a strong man, like
that shit looked like some Yakuza out of that scene in Kill Bill.
Yeah, no,
where Lucy Liu just runs down the table and chops that guy's head off.
Yeah, like, so this was more like South Park of that Britney Spears like episode.
Yeah,
like his like tongue still hanging out. I expected him to like start talking. Like,
yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, that was crazy though. When I think about someone getting their head taken off in one swipe, I think about Ned with Ice in the first episode when he takes that guy's head off. And I was like, yeah, I feel like if you're a guy that size with a sword that big, you can take someone's head off in one swipe, especially if it's Valyrian steel. And, we see him sharpening it often. But then I think for most people trying to chop someone's head off, it would be like freaking, what's his face? Reek. What is Reek's name? Theon Greyjoy. When he tries to cut off the Maester, Lord, the Master of Arms. I can't think of anyone's name. Like, he tries to cut off his head in like 3 seasons, and he's just hacking at it because it's like, yeah, that's probably what it's like for most people trying to chop someone's head off. It's probably not that easy.
Well, and also, I mean, Ned Stark most likely went for the neck, I assume, not the middle of the face.
Right.
Like, I wouldn't really when I hear somebody chopping their head off, I don't really think like through the middle. I assume there's like the neck involved, and like that's much easier to go through. You would think
a lot more soft stuff around there.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean,
so then we go on to the dinner, and this is one of those things where I feel like it's hard to know how much time passed because I would say that what happened with Vaemon when Corlys died, that was like 6 years from when Rhaenyra and Daemon got married. But then I think this dinner was actually a few years later or a couple years later. I know for sure, like, Viserys died he didn't die that same night. That'd be crazy. That's like one of those things they streamlined for the show. Like, he died a few years later.
Even then, that dinner was held like that night in the show, it seemed like.
Yeah. Exactly.
He specifically said, "I want to have dinner." Like, I mean, they made it all happen in like one day. Like, that was like,
Right.
yeah, I assume years worth of experiences. But
Yeah, I mean, he even actually, I think at that day, I don't think he ever sat on the Iron Throne again. Like he held court from like his own solar, and then eventually in his bed chambers. But he does get a little bit better from that point. I think his Maester dies. He gets a new Maester. The new Maester is better, and even like in the source material, like yeah, people were commenting that he's getting better because the Maester's using potions and poultices and ointments, and not just relying on leeches. It's like, yeah, other Maester leeches were who go to. Even in universe, people were like talking about it. Like, man, this guy and his fucking leeches over here.
I mean, you'd think that like if you were the king, and it's like, all right, last time my fingers were falling off, now it's my eye and leeches again.
Right, like they're not.
It doesn't feel the same as your patient. I'm telling you.
Your grace. Just imagine how bad you'd be doing if we weren't putting these leeches on you. That's what you need to think about. Like your whole arm would have fallen off by now.
Double down on the leeches is what I suggest.
So yeah, that dinner plays out similar to in the source material. I think in the source material, Daemon raises a glass to Sir Otto, so like everybody's just toasting everybody that they hates. But then it does end the exact same way where Viserys leaves, and then Aemon toasts his cousins or his nephews for being so strong, and a huge fight breaks out. So that was an interesting scene, just because it's like, wow, why are all of Alicent's kids such little shits?
Yeah.
Or at least both of them. It seems like Luke and Jace, they were kind of an assholes when they gave the pig to Aemon. Like, you know, we see them being, you know,
being a boy. Boys
right.
Be boys.
But at this point, like, Aegon's like 20 years old.
Yeah.
And he's just being an asshole to them for no reason. Aemon's like, 17, you know, and he's just also being a little shit. It's like, why can't we just be, you know, no, maybe they're resentful because they know that it's actually Luke who is, or Jace. Yeah, Jace who's the heir to the throne. And maybe that's it.
I feel like that's their mom. Their mom is doing.
Oh, yeah.
She talks, she's made it clear, like at one point in the previous episode, when he said, "Where have you heard this?" He looked like right at his mom. Or no, I don't know if the king looked at her or he looked at her. Or I don't think the little kid did, actually. I don't think the king just looked at her as soon as he said that. But either way, I mean.
And I think that's kind of one of the things I was picking up in this episode is like Rhaenyra and Alicent used to be friends. So it's easy for them to set things aside and try to make Viserys happy. And maybe they can, you know, work together and move forward, you know, with each other. But these kids never had that friendship to fall back on. Like when Viserys thought was like watching them train in the yard, like, oh, they're building this bond where they're going to be friends for life, be brothers for life. And it's like, that's not what's going on down there, man. Like, what are you watching? Like, that's clearly not what's happening down there. And it's just like, I think that's going to be a big part of this going forward. Like, these kids, they don't have a relationship with each other. They hate each other. They're going to all try to murder each other now. Like, Viserys is going to die. They all want to kill each other. Because that's kind of what happens in a lot of history when you start reading about kings and like, oh, yeah, he poisoned his uncle and then he became king. And he reigned for 12 years until his son killed him. And it's just like, yeah, this is a horrible time to be alive.
That's why Game of Thrones was so popular when it came out, because it was like mimicking like history. Like it wasn't so fantasy, you know, like the fantasy crept in on the sides. But I mean, it was supposed to be like
these stories are definitely based on real history. I forget the names of the people, but like it's like been confirmed. Like, yeah, this is the actual historical story that this story is based off of, and you see like all like the major strokes in there. Just
why don't you just save yourself time and just do that? History's, you know, more interesting than fiction half the time anyway. Then you take that history and you turn it into fiction, like
right,
like a win-win. Save yourself like all the extra groundwork.
And Viserys really blew this whole situation because he did not want to make anyone mad. He did not want to make anyone his enemy. Like he meant what he said, like at the table. He loved everyone there. He wanted everyone there to be friends and to be happy. And it's just like, that's not the way this is going to work when you die, dude. Like you were setting shit up to be a catastrophe. Like someone's going to be unhappy. No one's unhappy now because you're alive and you're stopping that from happening. But once that power vacuum happens, it's not just going to go to Rhaenyra and everything's going to be cool. Like, you have to recognize that. And he just doesn't, he refuses to recognize that.
I mean, you can see, I think the biggest, silliest mistake he made that like doesn't even make sense, that like I just feel like we didn't get an explanation for, was bringing Hightower back as his hand for a second go at it. That if that wouldn't happen, that like all the power Alicent has, most of that comes from him being there and influencing and, you know, having a part in just courting everything. I mean, without him there, that would, even just a little bit of her power taken away, would take away from her kids, would take away from everything. I mean, and down the road, that power is going to be why it's an even fight.
Yeah, 100%. Makes no sense at all.
And it doesn't make sense. You know, it's different. Like, there's other things that he could have done better, but that one right there was just so easily avoidable. Like, you already let him go, and it was like a pretty serious accusation he was making against the guy. And I don't know. I just feel like
there's
he should have brought him back.
And never to make it seem like what he was accusing wasn't true.
Yeah, no, he just like packed up and like, yeah, I guess so.
Right. Yeah. Another thing in the show that like I'm noticing that seems to be kind of weird to me, that is I've always found to be a much different from the books, is I feel like we don't see like the guards that these people have enough. Like, it's important. Like, who is Rhaenyra's sworn shield right now? Like, we know that Alicent has Christian Cole. Like, who does Vaemond have? Like, why was there no one standing behind Vaemond that Daemon could just come up and chop his head off? Like, I feel like you go in there and you're saying the shit you're saying to the king, you better be rolling deep with like 50 knights, because the king's guard is all right there. Like, where is anyone's guards? I remember in the show, I was upset that they didn't have Olenna Tyrell's guards, because I just thought it was funny. She had those two huge identical twins that she called right and left, but she couldn't remember their names. And that was like one of my favorite things from the book. And then in the show, it was like, yeah, Olenna Tyrell apparently doesn't have any personal guards. It's like, why would she not have any personal guards?
I feel like it's probably just like an acting thing, like just way easier to act a scene with less people in it. You know, and if everybody had them, that's a whole nother layer they'd have to add in. I mean, it was a cool little thing in the books, but I just feel like difficult to kind of maintain, especially in the new seasons or the new show with like all the time changes and all the new characters. Like, that would be.
No, you're right. You're right. And I don't necessarily need them all to have personalities, but like, I just like to see them. I just like to see
that they did do it a little bit with like Sir Gregor, and like there's a few other ones where like, I don't know, they were like they came into the story, but then they would leave if they're out of the story, so it wasn't like always there as a presence.
I tell you one thing that was funny to me when I watched that scene when they had dinner is like, after everything happens and like everything's calmed down, he calls for music and music immediately starts playing. And I was like, were those musicians just sitting in the corner the whole time, like watching this whole shit play out? Like, no one saying a word. Like, that must have been the most awkward shit ever. Just music. All right, here it is. Like, I guess they were just waiting.
I mean, that's like everybody. Like they're like, you know, talking, like, you know, cursing and all that. And the wine guy just like back into the corner. Like,
right.
You know?
There was a Robot Chicken skit like that once, where it was like this guy, like, he's the musician. It was like his first time playing with these guys. It's a Red Wedding. And he's like, oh my God. He's like, can you believe this? We're playing for Walder Frey and Robb Stark. We're going to be able to perform wherever we want to after this. Like, he's like the only one who doesn't know what's about to happen. I love Robot Chicken. So then we get the final scene where we see the death of Viserys. And I was very interested to see this, because when I read the source material, to me, I'm pretty sure, and I didn't go back and read this part, but I'm sure when I do, I seem to remember that it was heavily hinted or implied that Alicent might have poisoned Viserys. It's never confirmed, but people, I feel like, have those suspicions. And I completely understand why they do, because we watch it, she doesn't, unless there was something in the cup that we didn't see. But I mean, she's with him alone. She gives him a drink. Now he's dead. I think in the source material, he's described as a sickly old man, but nothing compared to like what we saw in that episode. Like, I feel like a guy who looks like that dies, then it's natural causes. Like, no one's going to get accused of poisoning that guy. The fact that he was alive to begin with is like a miracle. So I was interested to see, does Alicent actually poison Viserys? Because then that kind of clears up any gray area. Like, she's evil. She's not a black and white character. It's like she killed Viserys because she wanted to create a power vacuum and hope that her children could seize it. But then they go the complete opposite way, where not only does she not kill him, he says some completely ridiculous, dumb shit before he dies, completely confuses her. And so now she has an out to say that she like plausibly believes that his last wish was for Aemon to sit, or Aegon to sit the throne. How'd that scene play to you?
I mean, I don't recall exactly what he said, but that's not how I took it. What did he say?
He was talking to her, and he
As
thought
if
he was
she were-
talking to Rhaenyra.
Yeah, he picked up the conversation they'd had earlier.
Yes. And he was saying, he said the prince that was promised, and she was like, what? Like, she has no idea. She's never heard any of this before. Like the Song of Ice and Fire. So
Yeah.
he was talking about Aegon the Conqueror, his great grandfather, and how he had that dream, and why Targaryen always has to be on the throne. And that's why he did that for Rhaenyra. He's trying to protect her claim. But all she hears is the prince that was promised and King Aegon. And that's their oldest son's name. And so she is thinking that he's saying that the prince that is promised, or who the person who's supposed to lead the Iron Kingdoms, is their oldest son, Aegon, not Rhaenyra, his older sister, who's actually the heir. And to me, it doesn't really completely absolve her, because Rhaenyra named her son with Daemon Aegon. So Rhaenyra has a son named Aegon too. Like, there are two Aegons.
See, I didn't realize that she, I don't know, I guess I wasn't thinking about her son, and I figured like she just like knew that was supposed to be for somebody else. And like,
I don't think so.
yeah, and I can see that though. I mean, I didn't realize, I didn't like thought about the names. But like you said, they both got a kid name, with the same name. That's kind of.
It does make her actions after he dies more defensible. Like, she thinks if she convinces herself that she's doing what she's doing for a good reason, and to me, I feel like Alicent's the kind of person who kind of needs to do that. Like, she's gonna do what needs to be done, but she wants to convince herself that she's doing it for the right reason.
Yeah, and I can see that kind of goes in with the church mentality we were talking about earlier. She's doing what's right.
Right. And I think that's her whole thing. Like, she did what's right. She was married to Viserys. She had a bunch of children for him, which is her duty as a woman. Whenever he called her to his bed, she went there. I doubt she's ever had one orgasm in her entire life. And I mean, seemed like it was really tough for her to get through it 20 years ago. I can't imagine. I don't know when it stopped. Like, I'm sure he wasn't able to do anything probably for the past few years, but I feel like it went on way longer than anyone would have liked for it to.
I know. Maybe she deserves the kingdom.
Right. I mean, they do have another child, so
I feel like I thought of something. I don't know, just like in general with like the future, like we know is coming. It's interesting that like the Targaryens do end up staying in power, which I mean could be either house winning. Obviously, with the religion goes away. Goes to the 7, and it seems like even if that wasn't at the same time, I mean, it definitely seemed like it was a big religion before Robert Baratheon took over. Maybe it wasn't like the official, but it does seem like it was. Like, there were huge churches and lots of like priests everywhere at the time where the Game of Thrones puts up. So somewhere along the line, that religion takes over. I'm wondering if that has something to do with the war.
I think one of the grandchildren of like the ones who win. So this would be like great grandchildren to Viserys, I would guess. There's the one who builds the Sept of Baelor. That's like their like Vatican.
It makes me think the Hightower side wins.
Well, I mean, I feel like the only way a war wins is like both sides have to truce it out.
Yeah.
Unless you just kill everyone on the other side.
Yeah, and I do know of I can't remember who it was, if it was Napoleon or Caesar, one of the books I read or whatever, about the two of them. They purposely let like people keep their religion, or sometimes even adopted it. I think it was Napoleon purposely adopted it because he saw like the social benefit of people like believing these certain things.
I think a lot of rulers have done that. I mean, you can take people's religion from them if you want to like humiliate them and like utterly dominate them. Like, basically, not much more domination and humiliation than like defeating someone's gods. Like your gods
Well,
can't
no,
save you.
not even just that though, but the fact that like some religions hold their society in a tighter way that's more convenient to you.
Oh yeah,
I
absolutely,
think that's more of what
absolutely.
it was
And
militarily speaking. He was like, it's easier to hold these places when they're under these strict doctrines where they can't take up arms or they can't, you know, but they have to put 10% of their money to the religion. The priests run the towns. Like, it's beneficial to empire.
right. And what I was gonna say is, I think the Faith of the Seven was the dominant religion before Akon's conquest.
Oh, see, I
So
didn't realize
he,
that.
so like that was always going to end up being a dominant religion. It was just too big. Like they weren't going to impose anything on the entire country. You know. But yeah, I mean, it was a good episode. One thing else I was thinking about the Valyrians I was going to bring up with Vaemon. I think that there's a lot of resentment for Vaemon and maybe the Valyrians in general for the Targaryens when you think about the fact that they were both from old Valyria. The Targaryens were dragon lords, but they were very minor lords. Like Dragonstone's not a big island, it's not a crazy big castle compared to some of the families that were in Valyria. But the Valyrians were not even dragon lords. Like they were very, I would say, on the lower end of like lordship. They came to Westeros first and made a fortune, in shipping and became, the richest family in Westeros. And, they got, their own thing going there. And then you have the Doom of Valyria. The only families left is the Targaryens. And then Aegon just comes over with 3 dragons and now he's the king of like the entire 7 kingdoms. So it's like you built yourself up, and you're pretty successful. You're like this most powerful family over here. And then this other family that's from where you are, but they have the dragons, and like literally now they're the kings. And now like you gotta basically show fealty to them. So I feel like there is some animosity there with regard to that.
They did a good job though, as a family, tying themselves to them while maintaining like the money. That's something the Lannisters always did well too. It's like if you don't have power, but you still have the money, you're doing something very clever because when you're in power, you could take a lot of things. It's like, so to have that cash flow that the kingdom like needs and that the kingdom like respects and like,
that's what it is. It's making sure that they're reliant on your cash because they have the power. But if you have the money, you actually have the power.
Exactly. That's what I mean. But to have that not taken from you, I just feel like that's a dance,
Right.
They became more of like partners almost. Like,
right.
So it's,
yeah,
I didn't know all that
it's
history. I don't even know about the Doom of Valyria and all that. I need to read about all that.
I'm not sure what there's out there on that really. It's like just the very beginning of Fire and Blood. Basically, Aegon has his dream, and that's when he comes to Dragonstone. And because he's at Dragonstone, he doesn't die during the Doom of Valyria. Like literally everyone else there dies, and the Valyrians were already in Westeros, so they just end up being the last 2 families from Valyria left.
They don't talk about what the Doom is.
I don't think that anyone actually knows. I think there's like theories to it, but like no one actually knows what caused the Doom.
You mean like in like their world or ours?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, what we know in our world is what he gives us from their world, and like in their world, like no one's quite sure.
Well, I didn't know if you meant like their world had like mysteries about it, if like George R. R. Martin just hadn't said anything yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of both, but who knows how much more to the lore George R. R. Martin's ever going to add.
Yeah,
I mean, he's more likely to put out another lore book than he is to put out the book in the series. Unfortunately, I feel like
probably. I mean, might be for the best.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, well, that'll wrap it up. Got 2 more episodes left, 9 and 10. I expect 9 to be action-packed and 10 to be a wrap-up of the future seasons or any futures. The past show is any indication of the future. The previous one is any indication. That's the way it would play out. I know George R. Martin said recently that he thinks they have enough material for 4 10-episode seasons, and I'm pretty sure that the Civil War lasts for about 2.5 years. Which means that we've gone about 20 years of 9 episodes, and then we'll have about 31 episodes more where we go about 2.5 years. So we'll see if they stick to that or not.
I'm looking forward to some back-to-back actors.
Right. Someone was like, yeah, we're going to tune in next week. It's going to be 900 years into the future, and the Targaryens are going to have a colony on the moon.
I would watch it.
I mean, I would at least see what's going on. Like, and they're like, and the weirdest part is, but Sirius is going to still be alive. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. This is the Friends We Made. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Have a good one.